Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 5, and here are the reporters Magali Angelo, Mantalaba Recame, Obilidun Jasalin, Omboy Jaya May, Ordaneta James, Pagong Kenneth, and Palmero Nicole. Our topic for today is about earthquake and volcanoes, tropical cyclones, flooding and drought, the impacts of natural hazards, and managing the impact of natural hazard.
Before I start my report, may I ask everyone about sa nahitabo last October 16, 29, 31, and December 15, 2019? What natural disaster did the people of Davao del Sur and its neighboring provinces experience? Did you know how such phenomena occur? Good day, everyone. I am Angelo Magali, and my topic is all about earthquakes. So, what is an earthquake? When we say earthquake, is a weak to violent shaking of the ground produced by the sudden movement of rock materials below the Earth's surface. It is caused by a sudden slip on a fault. The earthquakes originate in tectonic plate boundary. The focus is point inside the Earth where the earthquake started, sometimes called the hypocenter. And the point on the surface of the Earth directly above the focus is called the epicenter. The tectonic plates are always slowly moving, but they get stuck at their edges due to friction. When the stress on the edge overcomes the friction, there is an earthquake that releases energy in waves that travel through the Earth's crust and cause the shaking that we feel. How is an earthquake measured? Actually, there are two ways by which we can measure the strength of an earthquake: the magnitude and intensity. When we say magnitude, it is proportional to the energy released by an earthquake at the focus. It is calculated from earthquakes recorded by an instrument called seismograph. It is represented by Arabic numbers. Intensity means, on the other hand, is the strength of an earthquake as perceived and felt by people in a certain locality. It is a numerical rating based on the relative effects to people, objects, environment, and structures in the surrounding. The intensity is generally higher near the epicenter. It is represented by Roman numerals. In the Philippines, the intensity of an earthquake is determined using the PHIVOLTS earthquake intensity scale. So, the examples of entry from the PHIVOLTS earthquake intensity scale are as follows. The one is the weakest, or what we call scarcely perceptible. Perceptible to people under favorable circumstances. Delicately balanced objects are disturbed slightly. Still water in containers oscillates slowly. And the next one is the 10, which is completely devastating. Practically all man-made structures are destroyed. Massive landslide and liquefaction, large-scale subsidence and uplifting of landforms, and many ground fissures are observed. Changes in river courses and destructive seisures in large lakes occur. Many trees are toppled, broken, and uprooted. So, why ang Philippines is prone siya sa earthquake? And sa geographical location and its fault system. Actually, we are familiar naman sa Pacific Ring of Fire since high school, right? So, the Ring of Fire, also referred to as the Circum-Pacific Belt, is a path along the Pacific Ocean characterized by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes. Its length is approximately 40,000 kilometers. It traces boundaries between several tectonic plates, including the Pacific, the Juan de Fuca and Cocos, and also the Indian Australian, Nazca, North American, and Philippine plates. The Philippines, an earthquake-prone country, registered numerous quakes every day, though most are not felt. PHIVOLCS or records an average of 20 earthquakes a day and 100 to 150 earthquakes are felt per year. The Philippine Fault Zone. The 1,200 kilometer long Philippine Fault Zone or PFZ is a major tectonic feature that transects the whole Philippine archipelago from northwestern Luzon to southeastern Mindanao. This arc parallel left lateral strike slip fault is divided into several segments and has been the source of large magnitude earthquakes in recent years, such as the 1973 Ragay Gulf earthquake, the 1990 Luzon earthquake, and also the 2003 Masbate earthquake. So, actually, some notable faults in the Philippines. There are three, I think. The first is the Ginayangan Fault. According to the 2020 data from the Philippine Institution of Volcanology and Seismology, PHIVOLCS, the Ginayangan Fault is an active fault traversing Quezon Province's central portion and is also part of the PFZ. The Ginayangan Fault can generate high-intensity quakes and was the cause of the magnitude 7 Ragay Gulf earthquake. During this event, intensity 8 ground shaking was recorded on the areas of Ginayangan Caluag and Lopez in Quezon. The second one is the Masbate Fault. Masbate is considered a seismically active region in the country, which explains the frequent quakes in the area, like the Ginayangan Fault. Masbate Fault is also, a segment of the PFZ. So there are also other potentially active faults in Masbate, including the Uzon Fault and the southern Masbate Fault. The magnitude 6.6 earthquake that struck the province in August 2022 was caused by the movement of the PFZ. Nearby provinces that felt an impact include Aklan, Albay, Biliran, Capiz, Leyte, and Negros Occidental. The third one is the Vigan Agal Fault, located in the westernmost part of PFZ. In northern Luzon is the 140-kilometer Vigan Agal Fault. A study published in 2020 showed that the fault has four segments: the Santa Sinai, San Juan Pintar, Bacara Burgos, and Pagudpud. Beside the Vigan Agal Fault, Ilocos region could also be severely affected by the West Valley Fault, should be the big one, or the worst case scenario of an earthquake happened. So, earthquake hazards. Mahitabo lang ng earthquake hazard if before and or after sa isa ka earthquake. So, first one is the ground fracture. Information on the ground that marks the intersection of the fault with the Earth's surface. So, unsa effect ani niya? Fissuring, katong, kanang mag-ana ang isa ka ground, split, so displacement of the ground due to movement of the fault or kanang mag-ano siya. So, ayan. The next one is the ground shaking. Disruptive up, down, and sideways vibration of the ground during an earthquake. The effects, ground shaking or damage or collapse of structure, may consequently cause hazards such as liquefaction and landslide. So, when we say liquefaction, phenomenon wherein sediments, especially near bodies of water, behave like liquids similar to quicksand. So, ang effect niya kay nag-sink, or sinking, or tilting of structure above it, sun-boiled fissuring. So, familiar man ta sa tsunami. Like, itong sa movie sa Japan na about tsunami, daghang mga naguba nga kuan dagko kay waves and other structures ni mga man-made. So, when we say tsunami, it is a series of waves caused commonly by an earthquake under the sea. The effects are flooding, coastal erosion, drowning of people, and damage to properties. That's what I have said earlier. So, next one is the earthquake-induced landslide. Downslope movement of rocks, solid, and other debris commonly triggered by strong shaking. Effects: erosion, burial, and blockage of roads and rivers. I think that's all, and I hope na mo na-learn any topic. And if you have some question or clarification, you can ask me through my social media account, Angelo Magale, and thank you so much.
Good day everyone, I am Ricami P. Mantalaba. To continue the report of Mr. Magale, I will discuss now the topic about volcanoes. What is a volcano? A volcano is a landform, a mountain, where molten rocks erupt through the surface of the planet. The volcano mountain opens downwards to a pool of molten rocks underneath the surface of the earth. Volcanoes are categorized into three main categories. First is active volcanoes, second is dormant volcanoes, and the third is extinct volcanoes. So to discuss, let me introduce to you first the first category of the volcano, which is the active volcanoes. Active volcanoes. A volcano will be classified as an active volcano if at the present time it is expected to erupt or is erupting already. According to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, there are 24 active volcanoes in the country. Based on the recent activity, Mayon, Pinatubo, Taal, Ibok-Ibok, Bulusan, and Canlaon are the 6 most active volcanoes in the Philippines. The second category is dormant volcanoes. The classification of volcanoes, which is called dormant, would be a volcano that is not erupting or predicted to erupt in the near future. With no record eruptions in the past centuries, Arayat is one of the dormant volcanoes in the Philippines. The last main categories of volcanoes is the extinct volcanoes. An extinct volcano is a volcano that no one expects will ever have another eruption. And one of the example in the Philippines is the Mount Butay in Camiguin. When magma erupts at the surface as lava, it can form different types of volcano depending on the viscosity or stickiness of the magma. Second is the amount of gas in the magma. Third is the composition of the magma. And fourth is the way in which the magma reached the surface. Strictly speaking, there are 2 broad types of volcano, a stratovolcano and a shield volcano. Although there are lots of different volcanic features that can form from erupted magma, such as cinder cones or lava domes, as well as processes that shape volcanoes. In this view, you can differentiate shield volcano and stratovolcano that will be discussed after this. Types of volcanoes. Shield volcanoes is a volcano that produces low viscosity and runny lava. It spreads far from the source and forms a volcano with gentle slopes. Most shield volcanoes are formed from fluid, basaltic lava flows. An example of shield volcano is Mauna Kea. Second is stratovolcanoes. Stratovolcanoes have relatively steep sides and are more cone-shaped than shield volcanoes. They are formed from viscous, sticky lava that does not flow easily. Stratovolcanoes are more likely to produce explosive eruptions due to gas building up in the viscous magma. An example of stratovolcano is the Mount Fuji in Japan. So what is the reason behind the eruption of volcanoes? The volcano eruption begins with the formation of magma in the lower section of the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is made up of massive slabs called plates, which fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. The The friction during the movement of plates causes earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. With pressure, it travels upwards with tremendous force, hitting solid rocks and other materials and creates a new passage to the Earth's surface. Once the magma reaches the air, it is called lava.
Tropical cyclone. A tropical cyclone is a rotating, organized system of clouds and thunderstorm that originates over tropical or subtropical waters and has a close, low-level circulation. Tropical cyclones rotating counterclockwise in the northern hemispheres. There are classified as follows. First, tropical depression. A tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 38 meters per hour or 33 knots or less. Second, tropical storm. A tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 39 to 73 meters per hour or 34 to 63 knots. The third one is hurricane. A tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 74 meters per hour or 64 knots or higher. In western North Pacific, hurricanes are called typhoons. Similar storms in the Indian Ocean and South Pacific Ocean are called cyclones. The last one, major hurricanes. A tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 111 meters per hour or 96 knots or higher, corresponding to a category 3 to 4 or 5 on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale.
Flood or flooding is an overflow of a large amount of water beyond its normal limits, especially over what is normally dry land. Flooding may occur as an overflow of water from water bodies in which the water overtaps or breeds, such as a river, lake, or ocean, accumulation of rainwater. Floods may really seem like the end of times. A great flood can take away lives and properties in an instant. This century has undergone severe global warming, which has increased the occurrence of weather-related disasters. The past decades has witnessed the Indian tsunami, which sunk parts of Asia and took lives in a matter of minutes. Recovering from a flood disaster can be a long process, which requires understanding, evaluating, and consequences of flood and the rebuilding of infrastructures and healing of trauma. So, there are consequences of flooding. The consequences of flooding can be devastating. Flooding immediately destroys lives and properties. Flood effect can change the feature of land areas permanently. The most immediate flood effect would be the destruction of homes. People get displaced and may have to evacuate a higher ground where their lives are at risk as long as the water remains on a certain level. So, there are causes and consequences of flood. So, the causes and consequences of flood affect not just people but the environment. The destruction of structures such as bridges and roads add to the human toll and prevent help from reaching devastated areas. Structures such as nuclear power plants are also put at risk. On 2011, a tsunami hit the coastline in Japan, causing leakage in nuclear plants. There was a high radiation recorded in the area, and authorities feared the worst. Many people, including animals, are affected by the flood. Flood effects are expensive disasters, and rebuilding an area devastated by a flood can be costly. In the United States, they cost $2.4 billion per year and can occur with weather-related disasters such as hurricanes and typhoons. Rivers, which overflow, can also cause waters to rise in an area. A dam breaking, snow melting also causes floods. earthquakes which presage tsunamis can cause massive flooding in coastal areas. So there is a social impact caused by the floods. Flooding issues include families being displaced resulting in trauma. Mental health professionals should be a part of the emergency response team to help people deal with the consequences of the loss of property and loved ones. Long-term challenges may include having to deal with the loss of livelihood and property. Individuals affected need to rebuild their lives and possessions. Government help is needed in disseminating aid and repairing structures that can help a community recover. There are the environmental impact of flooding. The environment can get severely devastated from a flood. There is the environmental impact of flooding. The environment can get severely devastated from a flood. Flood is mainly dirty water that carries waterborne diseases and possibly chemicals that can affect the quality of soil in the environment. The water supply in an area may get polluted from flood water, resulting in diseases and epidemic. So, number 1 is the loss of lives and property. Effect of flooding on property value can cause real estate in an area that plummet. In cities and residential areas, the first thing that people look for is safe, disaster-free areas which are not near earthquake zones or prone to flooding. There are zones or areas that are more susceptible to flooding because of poor town planning or proximity to bodies of water. The second one is the mass migration. People may be compelled to leave a place if there is a regular occurrence of devastating floods in an area. There can be a mass migration to higher or safer areas. People who have been constantly devastated by disasters such as floods may be moved to abandon their homes and roots entirely to plan out better futures in a place away from floods. Often people move to the cities, which cause much congestion in these areas and further economic challenges. The third one is the impact on economy. The most severe consequences of flooding are on the economy. During a flood, everything stops, including business and economic processes. Floods destroy food sources and transportation routes. A country that is regularly experiencing floods is expending money on recovery instead of growth and development. Livelihoods are likewise disrupted and businesses will be unwilling to invest in disaster-prone areas. The development of these areas will be at a standstill. So there are possible solutions in a flood. After a big flood or any kind of disaster, communities take some actions to ensure people's safety and decrease the chance of property or life loss during the next natural disaster. Number 1 is the climate change. Many experts point to climate change as one of the reasons behind the extremes in weather conditions. Damages caused by flooding are many and they affect both economically powerful and struggling nations. The initiative towards taking better care of the environment can halt the devastation of weather-related disasters. There should be a concerted effort by governments to decrease global warming by improving methods in combating pollution and degradation of the environment. The second one is good town planning. It is important that the town has a good layout to prevent possible structural problems. Engineers and architects should study the area and build structures that can withstand the challenges in the environment. Water systems should not be blocked and drainage systems must be covered. Rainwater must be allowed to pass through smoothly in the town's drainage system. A good drainage system offsets the effects of flash floods, resulting in a safer area. Third is the vegetation. The loss of trees and vegetation in strategic areas exacerbate what damage can floods cause. Trees, shrubs, and grass help protect areas from a flood by moving water. People should be encouraged to use vegetation to break the force of moving flood waters. The fourth one is the basins. In areas where there is severe flooding, basins should be installed near waterways as a temporary receptacle for flood water. Flash flood causes and effects can be mitigated by a detention basin. When flooding occurs, the flood water is drained into the basin, first giving people ample time to evacuate. The last one is the education. The consequences of flooding can be reduced with education. In some areas, waterways are clogged with litter, resulting in flood during rainfall. Instructing people about proper waste disposal and putting the proper containers for a litter can help for a cleaner environment and drainage system. People should also be educated about what to do during a flood to prevent the loss of lives and to ensure that each member of the community will be protected when an emergency happens.
Drought. Drought is a prolonged dry period in the natural climate cycle that can occur anywhere in the world. It is a slow onset disaster characterized by the lack of precipitation, resulting in a water shortage. Drought can have a serious impact on health, agriculture, economies, energy, and the environment. Drought and its effects. Drought can limit the growing season and create conditions that encourage insect and disease infestation in certain crops. Low crops yield can result in rising food prices and shortages, potentially leading to malnutrition. Drought can also affect the health of livestock raised for food. What is a drought example? For example, if an area has not had rain for an extended period of time, people might start to say that the region is experiencing a drought. According to the National Weather Service, a meteorological drought is measured by comparing the amount of precipitation to an average for a period of time. How can we prevent a drought? Being mindful of the amount of water you use each day can be a powerful way to prevent droughts. Turning off the faucet while you brush your teeth, watering your garden early in the morning so less water evaporates, and installing low-flow plumbing fixtures all are good ways to prevent wasted water.
The impact of natural hazard. But first thing first, what is natural hazard? So, ladies and gentlemen, natural hazard is a natural phenomenon that have a negative impact to the environment, especially to the human beings and other living organisms. And natural hazard is also referred to as natural disaster that are commonly typhoon, landslide, earthquake, thunderstorm, storm, and many more. So now let's proceed to the four categories of natural hazard. First, we have the geological hazard. Second, the meteorological hazard. Third, the hydrological hazard. And the last, the biological hazard. What is geological hazard? So, geological hazard is also referred to as geohazard. That is an adverse geologic condition capable of causing widespread damage that are usually earthquakes, landslide, volcanic eruption, and many more. Then, the meteorological hazard. So, meteorological hazard is a phenomenon that is caused by a sudden change of a weather condition. Examples are the typhoon, thunderstorm, tornado, and many more. Now, the hydrological hazard. So, from the word itself, hydro means water. So, it is an extreme events associated with the occurrence and sudden movements of water. Examples are the flooding, tsunami, and many more. Okay, the last, the biological hazard. So, biological hazard is an occurrence that can pose a threat to human health.
It includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, and molds or fungi. Common examples are the chickenpox, monkeypox, and the very common or very popular Ebola virus. So now, ladies and gentlemen, since you already have an idea of what is the natural hazard and its categories, now let's proceed to the impact of natural hazard to the social, economic, and environmental influence or aspect on society. Okay, first, what are the social impact of natural hazard? Okay, some social impact of natural hazard to the social influence are the loss of lives, injuries, physical and psychological health issues. It often considers the aspects of the individuals within the affected community. For instance, New Orleans lost 20% of the population due to Hurricane Katrina. This was not due to the deaths, but because of the people migrated as a result of losing their homes. Okay, now let's proceed to the environmental impact of the natural hazard. So, it includes damages or destruction of physical systems, particularly the ecosystem. Several of direct environmental damages caused by the 2011 tsunami in Japan includes contamination of groundwater, the silting of coastal waterways, and destruction of coastal ecosystems. Furthermore, indirect impacts includes the environmental tool of reconstruction. Okay, the last, the economic impacts of natural hazard. What are the impacts of natural hazard to our economy or economic condition? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the economic impacts are caused by direct and indirect results of natural hazards. Example of direct results are the loss of property and infrastructures, the buildings and the other infrastructures in the economy, caused by an earthquake or floods or landslide and many more. So economic impacts from indirect results, on the other hand, are the negative consequences of gross domestic product or the growth, the affected growth, GDP, the trade, and the opportunities in the economy.
We all know that Philippines is one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. We are hit by around 20 typhoons annually, and apart from that, some tsunamis and earthquake. So to minimize the impacts of disaster, let me discuss what are the 5 stages of disaster management and define what is disaster management. So let's define first what is disaster management. When we say disaster management, this is about organizing and directing resources to cope with a disaster and coordinating the roles and responsibilities of responders, private sector organizations, public sector agencies, non-profit and faith-based organizations, volunteers, donations, and etc. The ultimate goal of the disaster management is to minimize the event's impact on something that involves preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. So now let me discuss what is the 5 stages of disaster management. First is prevention. The best way to address disaster is by being proactive. This means identifying potential hazard and devising safeguards to mitigate the impact. Although this stage in the cycle involves putting permanent measures into place that can help minimize disaster risk, it's important to acknowledge that disasters can't always be prevented. Prevention involves scenarios such as implementing an evacuation plan in a school, for example, showing teachers how to lead students to safety in the event of an earthquake or fire. Second is planning and designing city in a way that minimizes the risk of flooding, for example, with the use of dams or channels to divert water away from populous areas. Second is mitigation. Mitigation aims to minimize the loss of human life that would result from a disaster. Both structural and non-structural measures may be taken. A structural measure means changing the physical characteristic of a building or an environment to curb the effects of a disaster. For example, clearing trees away from a house can ensure that dangerous storms don't knock down the trees and send them crashing into homes and public buildings. Non-structural measures involve adapting or amending building codes to optimize safety for all future building construction. So third is preparedness. Preparedness is an ongoing process in which individuals, communities, businesses, and organizations can plan and train for what they'll do in the event of a disaster. Preparedness is defined by ongoing training, evaluating and corrective action, ensuring the highest level of readiness. Fire drills, active shooter drills, and evacuation rehearsals are all good examples of the preparedness stage. Number 4 is response. Response is what happens after the disaster occurs. It involves both short and long-term responses. Ideally, the disaster management leader will coordinate the use of resources, including personnel, supplies, and equipment to help restore personal and environmental safety, as well as to minimize the risk of any additional property damage. During the response stage, any ongoing hazards are removed from the area. For example, fallen trees, mga poste na natumba, mga atop na nagkatagsagalan, and many more. The fifth stage in the disaster management is recovery. This can take a long time, sometimes years or decades. For example, sa Siargao, sa Bagong Odette, it takes 5 to 7 months sa sila medyo naka-recover jud. It involves stabilizing the area and restoring all essential community functions. Recovery requires prioritization. First, essential services like food, clean water, utilities, transportation, and healthcare will be restored with less essential service being prioritized later. Ultimately, this stage is about helping individuals, communities, businesses, and organizations return to normal or a new normal depending on the impact of the disaster.